Who are the 24 elders? They appear more times in Revelation than the 4 horsemen, more times than the 7 trumpets. They are positioned closer to God than the angels. They sit on thrones, they wear crowns, and they hold the prayers of every suffering believer on earth in golden bowls. And yet, most people who have read this book their entire lives cannot tell you a single thing about them. Are they angels? Are they human beings who have died and been glorified? Are they something else entirely? That question has been debated since the 1st century, and the answer is not a small question, because what the 24 elders are tells you what you are going to be doing before the throne of God in eternity. The oldest manuscripts we have cannot fully agree on one sentence about them. That sentence is the hinge everything else turns on. By the end of this investigation, you will know exactly who they are, what they are doing before God's throne right now, and why it changes how you see heaven, prayer, and eternity. Let's find out. Most readers of Revelation sprint past the elders to reach the dramatic content. The seals, the trumpets, the beast, the mark. But they are always there, in the background of every major scene, already in position, already doing something. And almost no one stops to look at them. John is taken up into heaven. Revelation chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. He sees the throne, the one seated on it, described in jasper and carnelian, an emerald rainbow encircling it, and surrounding the throne, 24 thrones, 24 elders, white robes, golden crowns. Before anything else happens in heaven, before a single seal breaks, before a single trumpet sounds, before the beast rises, before the mark is offered, before any of the visions most readers actually came looking for, they are already there, already enthroned, already crowned, already at rest. Whatever else Revelation is about to unfold across its remaining 18 chapters, these 24 figures are established first, positioned in the very architecture of the opening scene before the narrative moves anywhere else. Look at everything they actually do across the book, and a pattern emerges immediately, a pattern most readers never notice because they are too busy watching for something louder. They fall down and worship 5 separate times. They cast their crowns before the throne once. They speak and sing on 4 occasions. They hold harps once. They hold golden bowls, described explicitly as the prayers of the saints, once. And on 2 occasions, one elder turns and speaks directly to John, comforting him. These are not passive background figures propping up a heavenly stage set. They worship. They intercede. They teach. They comfort. Everything they do carries meaning, and every one of those actions is about to become a piece of evidence. Now look at where they are standing. This is the detail almost no one notices, and it is the first real clue in this investigation. At the center of the throne room, the 4 living creatures, positioned immediately around the throne itself. Next, the 24 elders, seated on their own thrones. And elsewhere in the scene, the angels, described in Revelation 5 as myriads of myriads, an uncountable host. But turn to Revelation chapter 7, verses 11 and 12, and read the sentence carefully. And all the angels were standing around the throne, and around the elders, and the 4 living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God. Read that again. The angels are described as standing around the elders, not among them. The text does not spell out a rank order here. It is not making an explicit claim about who stands closer to God than whom. But it is making a clear claim about category. The elders are consistently listed as their own distinct group, set apart from the angelic host rather than folded into it. If the 24 elders were themselves simply a class of angelic beings, we would expect the text to describe them as angels, standing among the angels, indistinguishable from the rest of that host. Instead, in scene after scene, they are named separately, seated separately, and positioned separately. That single detail from Revelation 7 does not settle the question by itself, but it is the first thread, and it points somewhere specific. To find out where, we have to give the opposing case its full hearing first. This is not a straw man. The angelic view is a real position, held by careful scholars, and it deserves its full case before we move past it. 3 answers to the identity of the 24 elders have circulated since the 1st century. We are not going to dismiss 2 of them in a single dismissive sentence. We are going to give the strongest version of each position, and then let the evidence decide. Here is the case for the angelic view, presented as strongly as its best defenders present it. In Job chapter 1, the sons of God present themselves before the Lord, and Satan comes among them. In Psalm 82, God takes his place in the divine council and judges in the midst of the gods, holding court over lesser heavenly powers. In 1 Kings 22, the prophet Micaiah sees the Lord seated on his throne with all the host of heaven standing beside him, deliberating over how to bring about a king's downfall. In Daniel chapter 7, thrones are set up, and the Ancient of Days takes his seat, his clothing white as snow, and the court convenes for judgment, with 10,000 times 10,000 standing before him. This is not a marginal or invented pattern. It runs consistently through the entire Hebrew Bible, the conviction that God does not rule in total isolation, but surrounded by an assembly of heavenly beings who witness, serve, and participate in his governance of all creation. The 24 elders fit this ancient pattern precisely. A council of enthroned beings positioned around God, participating in worship and judgment. Some scholars trace the imagery further back still, to Jewish apocalyptic literature, which itself carried echoes of older Babylonian astrological traditions surrounding 24 star deities, later reinterpreted within Jewish thought as a class of angelic beings governing the heavens. And there is one more piece of evidence for this view, the strongest piece, and the one this entire video is built around resolving. Revelation 5, verses 9 and 10. The 4 living creatures and the 24 elders sing a new song to the Lamb. Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God. The manuscript evidence for this verse is unsettled in a specific way. Our oldest major witness, Codex Alexandrinus, contains no personal pronoun at all in this clause. It does not say us. It does not say them. It simply ends with for God. Other manuscripts supply a pronoun. Some add us, a few add them, but those additions appear to be later scribes, resolving an ambiguity that John himself left open. The elders may be singing about a redemption they experienced. They may be announcing one they witnessed. The text, at its most ancient, refuses to settle the question for us. If that reading is correct, the 24 elders may be singing about the redemption of humanity as observers, not as participants, praising a rescue they witnessed, not one they experienced. This is the strongest version of the angelic view. It draws on a genuine biblical pattern. It has real manuscript evidence behind it. It is not a position to be waved away. Now here is the case, presented fairly, on the other side of this debate. Look first at the word John chose to name them. Not agelos, the standard Greek word for angel, which John uses 67 separate times throughout this book whenever he means to describe an angelic being. He does not use it here. He uses presbyteros, elder. White robes, victors' crowns, and thrones are promised repeatedly throughout Revelation's letters to the 7 churches, and every single one of those promises is made to believers. Never once, anywhere in Revelation, is any promise of a crown or a throne extended to an angel. Then look at Revelation 7, verse 13. One of the elders turns to John and asks him a question. Who are these, clothed in white robes, and from where have they come? Notice what is happening in that sentence. This is not an angel delivering an announcement. The standard mode angels operate in throughout this book, appearing to declare, to warn, to reveal. This elder asks a question he clearly already knows the answer to. That is a specific and recognizable teaching device. God uses the identical technique with Ezekiel, standing in the valley of dry bones. Son of man, can these bones live? God does not ask because he does not know. He asks to draw the listener into discovering the answer for himself. The elder uses that same device with John, not to inform him, to teach him. An angel in this book announces, this elder disciples. G.K. Beale's symbolic reading adds one further layer worth holding alongside this. Beale argues, the 24 elders are not necessarily 24 specific named individuals, but a corporate symbol, 12 tribes plus 12 apostles, representing the complete people of God, across both covenants, old and new, gathered into a single unified body before the throne. On this reading, the number itself is theological, before it is literal. A deliberate doubling of 12, the number stamped across both the Old Covenant people and the New Covenant Church, fused into one image of the entire redeemed community throughout history. The symbolic view and the redeemed church view are not actually rival positions competing for the same territory. They converge on the same destination from two different directions, one asking what the elders represent, the other asking who specifically fills that representation. Both arrive at the same answer. The 24 elders are the church, in its glorified, representative, eternal form. 4 Greek words, each one a fingerprint, and the case tightens with everyone. The first fingerprint is the word itself, presbyteros. This word appears 66 times across the entire New Testament. Every single occurrence refers to a human being. Not once, anywhere in Scripture, in any book, in any context, does this word refer to an angel. The elders of Israel, the Zachanim, were the recognized governing body of God's people. 70 of them stood with Moses. When the Hebrew Scriptures were translated into Greek, the Septuagint rendered that word using this exact word, presbyteroi. John's first readers would have heard an unmistakable echo the moment this word appeared. It carried the entire weight of Israel's representative leadership across 1,000 years of history. John had 67 separate opportunities throughout Revelation to write agelos instead. He chose differently, every single time. That is not an accident. That is a deliberate vocabulary choice, sustained with total consistency across an entire book. The second fingerprint is the crown. Greek has 2 distinct words for crown, and they are not interchangeable. Diadema is the royal crown of birthright, sovereignty by nature. Stephanos is the victor's wreath, a crown that must be earned, awarded for having overcome something. The beast in Revelation wears diadema. Christ wears diadema. But the 24 elders wear Stephanos, the earned crown, the overcomer's crown. That specific crown is promised throughout Revelation exclusively to believers who endure hardship without giving up their faith. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life, Christ tells the suffering church at Smyrna. Hold fast what you have, so that no one may seize your crown, he tells the church at Philadelphia. Every one of these promises is made to overcoming human believers. Not once, anywhere in Scripture, is a Stephanos promised to an angel. And then, in Revelation 4, verse 10, the elders do something with those crowns. They take them off, and they cast them down before the throne. This is a specific, well-documented gesture from Roman imperial custom. Subject kings would formally lay their crowns at the feet of the emperor. A public acknowledgement that whatever authority they held only because the emperor permitted it. The scholar David Owen traces this precise gesture to that Hellenistic Roman court tradition. No equivalent gesture exists anywhere in Jewish or Israelite literature. The elders are performing that exact gesture toward the Lamb, in full view of the assembled host of heaven. Every crown they wear, they lay back down. That is the most honest gesture in eternity. The third fingerprint is the harp. The kithara was the most prestigious instrument in the ancient world. Formal, priestly, prophetic, reserved for the highest occasions of worship. In 1 Chronicles 25, King David organizes 24 courses of Levitical singers to prophesy before God with harps. 24 courses. The same number, the same instrument, the same purpose. Later in Revelation chapter 15, verse 2, the victorious saints, believers who conquered the beast through their own faithful endurance, are shown holding harps of God. Same instrument, same context of victory and worship. The redeemed martyred church holds harps in Revelation 15. The 24 elders hold harps in Revelation 5. The same author, the same instrument, the same category of worshiper, 10 chapters apart. The fourth fingerprint is the golden bowl of incense. In the tabernacle, the high priest alone was permitted to enter the innermost chamber once each year, carrying incense, performing one intercessory act on behalf of an entire nation who could not enter that space themselves. One man, one moment, enormous personal risk. The 24 elders hold golden bowls, and Revelation tells us explicitly what fills them: the prayers of the saints. 1 Peter chapter 1 describes angels as longing to look into the realities of redemption, fascinated, curious observers of something they have not personally walked through. The elders hold what angels only study from the outside. You tend to hold most carefully what you know most intimately. These figures hold prayers as people who once knew what it was to need mercy, not as distant messengers relaying a request they never had reason to make themselves. This is the intimacy of shared experience, not the distance of a messenger relaying information secondhand, however faithfully. All of Scripture was building toward this scene, centuries before John ever saw it. Exodus chapter 24. But look at the order of events carefully, because it matters. The covenant is ratified first. Moses reads the words of the Lord aloud. The people agree to keep them, and blood from the sacrifice is sprinkled on the altar and on the people themselves, sealing the agreement. Only after that ratification is complete do Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel climb Mount Sinai together. And they see God. Under his feet, the text describes a pavement of sapphire, clear as the sky itself. And then a detail most readers move past too quickly to notice. They eat and drink in his presence. They are accepted, not consumed. In a moment when direct exposure to God's presence was understood to be fatal, when Moses himself would later be told that no one can see God's face and live, this small representative group stands, eats, shares a meal in the immediate presence of the Almighty, and survives. 74 human beings, given a privilege no other generation of Israel would receive in quite the same way. A meal shared with God on the mountain, once the covenant had already been sealed in blood. Now turn to Revelation 4, verse 6. Before the throne, John sees a sea of glass, clear as crystal. Echoing the same celestial pavement Moses and the 70 elders once stood on at Sinai, described again 1,400 years later, before the presence of God. The pattern echoes across both scenes, representative human beings brought into God's immediate presence and accepted there. What was temporary and mountaintop-bound in Exodus becomes, in the reality Revelation depicts, permanent and eternal. The shadow lasted for one meal. The reality it points toward never ends. 1 Chronicles 24. King David organizes the descendants of Aaron, the entire priesthood of Israel, into 24 separate divisions. The reasoning is practical and precise. The tabernacle, and later the temple, required priestly service at all times, every day, without interruption. But no single priest could stand continuously before God on behalf of the entire nation. So 24 representative heads were established, each division rotating through a fixed period of service, so that the whole priesthood, the entire mediating class between Israel and her God, would always be represented before him at every moment, even while most of its members were living ordinary lives, far from the altar. The 24 elders are the eternal completion of that exact principle. No rotation required any longer, no division taking its turn and then stepping aside for the next. The entire redeemed priesthood, standing representatively, permanently, before the throne, forever. And then there is a verse almost no preacher ever reaches, Isaiah 24, verse 23, tucked inside a chapter largely devoted to judgment and desolation, easy to read past without noticing what it actually says. Then the moon will be confounded and the sun ashamed. For the Lord of hosts reigns on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and his glory will be before his elders. Read that carefully. God's glory, his fullest, most direct self-revelation, is displayed before his elders. In eternity, the highest privilege is not to be God, it is to behold him. Isaiah saw this pattern 700 years before John ever climbed onto Patmos and received his own vision. The same principle, echoing forward across 7 centuries. This detail was not improvised in the 1st century, it had always been the plan. This is the climax. The open loop closes here. The verdict is delivered here. Return to the architecture of the throne room one final time. The throne at the absolute center. The 4 living creatures closest, forming the innermost ring. The 24 elders next, seated on their own thrones, exactly where we first found them back in Act 1. The angels forming the outermost circle, surrounding all of it, millions of them, orbiting 24 seated figures who never once stopped being closer to the center than they were. And between the throne and everything beyond it, the sea of glass. In the tabernacle, the bronze laver stood between the courtyard and the altar, a place of ritual purification required before anyone could approach God's presence. In heaven, that same threshold has become a sea of glass. Still, clear, already crossed. The 24 elders are seated on the far side of it, already with God, already home. Revelation chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. A scroll rests in the right hand of the one seated on the throne, sealed shut with 7 seals. A mighty angel calls out across all creation, "Who is worthy to open this scroll and break its seals?" No one answers. No one in heaven, no one on earth, no one under the earth. And John weeps. The same Greek word used for Mary Magdalene, weeping outside an empty tomb she believed had been robbed of the body she loved. The 24 elders are sitting right there, crowned, enthroned, closer to God than any other created being in the room, and they cannot open it. Their proximity to the throne does not grant them the authority the scroll requires. They need someone else entirely. They are the redeemed, not the Redeemer, not the one worthy to open the seal. Then, verses 5 through 7, one of the 24 elders speaks directly to the grieving apostle, breaking the silence that no one else in the entire scene had been able to break. Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals. John turns to see the lion, and instead, he sees a lamb, standing as though it had been slain. The lamb steps forward and takes the scroll from the hand of the one on the throne. The elder knew this moment was coming. He announced it before it happened. He had, in some sense, been waiting his entire existence for exactly this. And then the room erupts. Verses 8 through 14. The 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fall down before the Lamb, together, simultaneously, each one holding a harp and golden bowls of incense. Worship and intercession happening in the same instant, and they sing a new song. Now, the sentence the manuscripts themselves cannot fully agree on. Revelation 5, verse 9. You were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God. Here the textual history is more complicated than a simple two-sided disagreement. The oldest and strongest witness we have for this verse, Codex Alexandrinus, contains no personal pronoun at all in this clause. It simply reads that the Lamb ransomed people for God, full stop. Later manuscripts, including Codex Sinaiticus and others, add the word us, either before or after for God, apparently to clarify who is being addressed, since the original phrasing leaves the object of the sentence ambiguous. A small number of manuscripts go further still and remove the reference to God altogether, replacing it outright with us. Serious textual scholars generally judge the shorter, pronounless reading in Alexandrinus to be the earliest and best attested text, with the later editions representing scribes trying to resolve an ambiguity John himself left open. This is not, then, a case of 2 competing manuscripts confidently disagreeing on us versus them. It is a case where the earliest text is genuinely ambiguous, and later scribes tried to fill in what they believed John meant, most often by adding us, which would support the redeemed church reading. Here is why that ambiguity does not change the verdict. Every fingerprint we have gathered survives, even if we set the ambiguity of that one clause aside entirely and refuse to lean on it either way. Presbyteros, strong evidence, never once used for an angel anywhere in Scripture, in 66 separate occurrences. Stephanos, promised exclusively to overcoming believers throughout Revelation's letters to the churches, never to angels. The harps, shared specifically with the martyred, victorious saints of Revelation 15, the same instrument in the same author's hands 10 chapters later. The golden bowls, an image of priestly intimacy that fits the redeemed far more naturally than it fits a class of curious, external observers, which is how Peter describes the angel's relationship to redemption. The Socratic question posed to John in chapter 7, the register of a teacher who once needed teaching, not a herald reciting a rehearsed announcement. The elders themselves, consistently named as their own distinct category, never folded into the angelic host, even when described in the same scene as them. And even taking the most cautious possible reading of that one ambiguous clause, one where the elders might be understood as singing about a redemption they are simply announcing rather than personally possessing, the rest of the case does not depend on it. They wear crowns that only overcomers ever receive, and then lay those crowns back down in an act of total submission. They are consistently distinguished from the angelic host rather than folded into it, They announced the exact moment of the Lamb's vindication before anyone else in the room understood what was happening. The single ambiguous clause was never the load-bearing piece of evidence. It was one detail among many, and the case stands without needing to resolve it in either direction. The word names them. The crown identifies them. The harp places them among the redeemed. The golden bowl fits the redeemed far more naturally than it fits an outside observer. The register of their speech confirms it. And the elder who turned to a weeping human being and said, "Weep no more," speaks from further along the same road John was still walking. They are the redeemed, not the Redeemer. And when the Lamb finally took that scroll, they fell. Because the Lamb alone was worthy, and because that worthiness was the only thing that gave their existence its reason. The throne room is not showing you someone else's story. It is showing you yours. Not in some distant future tense, disconnected from where you are standing right now. In the present tense of what God has already prepared, already set in motion, already promised. The elders are already there, already enthroned, already holding the bowls. And if they are who the evidence points toward, the glorified representative people of God, drawn from every tribe and nation across both covenants, then what you are watching unfold in Revelation 4 is not a vision of strangers standing in a room you will never enter. It is a vision of what you will be. You will be on a throne, not because you earned the right to sit there through your own effort, your own record, your own accumulated goodness, because the Lamb was found worthy, and you held on to him through whatever came. The throne was never about your qualifications. It was always about his. You will hold a bowl, filled with incense, and Revelation tells us plainly what that incense actually is: the prayers of the saints. Somewhere, right now, tonight, someone is suffering in a way you cannot see and will never fully know. Someone is praying a prayer that feels, from where they are kneeling, like it is disappearing into complete silence, like no one is listening, like the ceiling is made of stone. If the elders truly are the glorified, redeemed people of God, then picture what that could mean. In eternity, you, glorified, enthroned, already having walked through your own version of that same silence, may carry prayers like that one before the throne yourself. The most lonely prayer that has ever been prayed in the darkest room on earth, held before God by someone who once knelt in a dark room of their own and prayed prayers that sounded exactly like it. Not a stranger handling your pain from a comfortable distance. Someone who remembers, in their own body, what it cost to keep praying when nothing seemed to be answering back. Revelation does not spell out that exact image in so many words, but it is the natural shape of what the bowls of incense suggest. Once you understand who is likely holding them, your prayers are not disappearing into nothing. Someone, in eternity, may carry them. You will cast a crown, and when that moment comes, it will be the single most honest act you have ever performed. Because everything that crown represents, every act of faithfulness that cost you something, every moment you endured when walking away would have been easier. Every quiet decision to hold on when holding on made no sense to anyone watching. None of it originated with you. The crown was given. It was never manufactured by your own strength, however much it may have felt, in the moment of enduring, like it was entirely your own effort holding you together. And in eternity, the only honest response to a crown you did not create is to lay it back down at the feet of the one who gave it in the first place. What are you holding on to right now, quietly, privately, as though it belongs to you, that you will one day place at his feet? And so we end exactly where we began. One elder, one grieving apostle, 4 words. This elder was not a herald delivering cold information to a stranger, not a being who had never known what it costs to wait, to hope, to watch a promise delay past the point of bearing it. This elder knew what it was to weep, had walked the same road John was walking in that exact moment, had held on through something that once felt unbearable, and was now standing on the other side of it, enthroned, crowned, and finally at rest. From that side, the far side of the road, the elder turned toward the man still weeping, and said, "It is finished. The lion has conquered. The scroll has already been taken from the hand that held it. Weep no more." Whatever you are weeping over right now, tonight, in whatever room you are sitting in as you hear this, the scroll has been taken. The Lamb has already conquered. The story does not end in silence, and it does not end in an empty room where no one is listening and nothing ever changes. It ends in a throne room erupting with sound, and an old, exiled apostle being told, by someone who once walked exactly where he was walking, "Weep no more." And one day, you will be the one saying those same 4 words to someone else. If this investigation gave you something you had never seen in Revelation before, share it with one person who thinks they already know what this book is about. Most people who avoid Revelation avoid it because they think it is only about fear. This was never that. Subscribe. This is what we do on this channel. We go to the places in Scripture that most people skip past on their way to somewhere louder. Tell me in the comments, did this change how you read the book of Revelation? And which single moment hit the hardest? And if you want to understand the complete story of the New Testament that Revelation itself belongs to and completes, the video on your screen walks you through the whole of it, start to finish. Watch it. It will finish the picture this one just opened.